Hello everybody and welcome to the next British Touring Car 2023 race review with my good friend Ben. Say hello.
Hello.
Yep, so we are going to be covering the next round, which is rounds 16 to 18, taken from this past weekend's Croft circuit race set, I guess you'd call it. So the racing was decent, I'd say, to an extent. We've not had like a fantastic racing at the circuit this year, but for the most part it wasn't too bad. This one might be a bit shorter than usual, but as always we're going to get right into qualifying. Just before we do though, real quick, don't forget that you can find our 2023 playlist in the description of all of our videos, and many thanks for your continued support on these videos as we go through the season. We do have a few more videos planned coming up, so stick around for those. Anyway, let's get into qualifying. So we had a few laps disallowed this time due to track limits. It wasn't as many as Brands Hatch, I think, where there was a lot. However, there was still a fair few. The weekend actually saw a return for Michael Kreese, who has taken Bobby Thompson's seat at Team Hard due to financial reasons. Did not say exactly what, but supposedly it's financial reasons. And Jade Edwards has replaced Will Powell at One Motorsport. But in qualifying though, we had a red flag due to Daryl DeLeon, I think it is, who's also joined the Team Hard fray, who crashed into the tyres. However, no one managed to really improve apart from Cook and Turkington during the session. But in the end, it was Napa Racing who showed that they were the head of the field, as Dan Camish took pole position ahead of Dan Rowbottom and Ash Sutton, making it a Napa 1-2-3, and I believe it's the first 1-2-3 of the season. Moving into race 1 though, we had a great start by Dan Camish and the Napa guys to stay 1-2-3 in formation. Jake Hill took on Turkington for 5th place and passed him on the outside going into the Jim Clark S's, and it was a pretty bold move, but again, Turkington was going a bit slow on the past few corners. That's all Hill needed. He managed to put on a great little move into the S's. Ingram managed to also pass Turkington by the end of the first lap and move himself up into 6th place. Meanwhile, further back, we saw an interesting scrap between Butcher, Morgan, Osborne and Ronan Pearson for 13th place at the start of lap 2. Aaron Taylor-Smith put a move on Ricky Collard for 11th place with a daring move on the inside on lap 3. Further back, we saw Michael Kreese go wide across the grass and pick up debris, and also some of the quick fit sign, which that drops in down the order. Lap 5 and 6 saw some good action with Dan Lloyd putting a great move on Moffat for 9th place. However, he soon dropped down the order due to being hit by Ronan Pearson later in the lap, and was right in the thick of it with Butcher, Chilton, Doble, Morgan and Pearson coming into lap 6. Pearson himself ran very wide into the first complex and dropped down the order because of the earlier contact, which eventually became retirement on lap 7. Mikey Doble put a move on Rory Butcher for 14th on lap 8. Butcher himself ran wide, which dropped him down the order. Things got worse for Butcher himself as he came to the pits to retire shortly after this. Josh Cook did quite well this race and put on a great defensive drive against Hill, Ingram and Turkington to stay ahead in 4th place. Try as they might, there was a fair few attempts by the 3 cars behind Cook. They tried everything to get past, just couldn't get past whatsoever. It is worth noting as well that Sutton and Cook were on the mediums, whereas Hill, Ingram and I believe Turkington were all on the soft tyres, so they did have a pace advantage but they couldn't get past him. Sam Osborne put an aggressive move on Aaron Taylor-Smith for 10th place, and despite contact, it didn't result in damage to either car. Well, not serious damage anyhow. Adam Morgan had a miserable race as he spun on lap 11, which dropped him to 19th place. Osborne did well to get ahead of Moffat for 9th place on lap 13. Moffat, meanwhile, dropped down the order to 13th as his hard tyres performance suddenly dropped off. However, in the end, nothing could stop the Napa train from winning as Dan Camish, Ash Sutton and Dan Rowbottom filled the podium places. Rowbottom let Sutton pass during the final lap to gain further points on Ingram in the title fight. So your race 1 results are Dan Camish is your race winner, Ash Sutton 2nd with the fastest lap, Dan Rowbottom 3rd, Josh Cook in 4th, Jake Hill 5th ahead of Tom Ingram in 6th, Colin Turkington in 7th, Stephen Jelly in 8th, Sam Osborne in 9th and Aaron Taylor-Smith to round out the top 10. Over to you for race 2, Ben.
Yeah, so for race 2, there was oil on the track, sort of in little bits and places, and they had a few sort of issues here and there with it, but that was resolved. It was nothing compared to what comes later in the day. And so once they're all set up on the grid, they all got going. It was the Napa lads who was at the front with a 1, 2, 3 of Sutton, Camish, and Robo, with Camish up front. And Camish and Sutton, they get a really good getaway, and Hill is instantly on the tail of Rowbottom, but he's sort of blocked in by Cook and can't really gain much more than that. He's stuck basically just behind Rowbottom for now. Rowbottom does really well to keep Hill sort of blocked up behind him and not let him pass, so he can't get up to Camish. Moffat then spins across the track. It's quite scary if you watch it. I'd recommend people do. And he misses everyone, luckily, as he slid off the grass and straight across the first corner, over past everyone. He managed to get the car going. He keeps it on somehow. It was quite scary still. Then Hill has to miss the chicane because you can't really get two of you sort of through there when you're too wide. So that dropped him back a few spots, as obviously you can't really gain an advantage from that because he'd lose it anyway. And then Ingram gets up behind Rowbottom at this point, and he's now pressing the charge. So on to lap 2. Ingram is defending now Josh Cook. That drops him a bit away from Rowbottom, which leaves the Napa lads in the top 3. Sutton is now flying up the road in the lead. He's got a massive lead from it. Lap 5. Ingram starts having a few little argy-bargies with Rowbottom. They're both rubbing and everything down the straight, but he doesn't manage to get past and stays on his tail. At this point, it's announced that Jade had a penalty for a false start. I think it was a 10-second penalty, if I remember correctly. On lap 6, Pearson is in the pits, and you can see grass is being removed from the front of his car. So he's clearly had an off-track excursion. On lap 8, Hill and Turkington start chasing down Cook together, and it sort of seems that the BMWs are starting to gain something off the tyres at this point, and they're starting to move up. Ingram is given a track limits warning on lap 9. This shows how hard he must be pushing. And then all of a sudden it shows that Gamble is in the pits with a retired car. It's just getting pushed into the garage. On lap 10, Hill spins it. He's just got too close to Josh Cook, and he'd just gone through the gravel with the left-hand side of his car. So as soon as he put the power back on, when he had like no front-end grip and one side of the tyre was obviously all scrubbed up from the gravel, he just lost it. That dropped him down to 11th. On lap 13, Watson and Osborne start to have a really interesting battle, and this sort of keeps going right towards the end of the race, where we then have our winner as Ash Sutton, who funnily enough also had the fastest lap. Second is Camish, third is Rowbottom, fourth is Ingram, fifth is Cook, sixth is Turkington, seventh is Jelly, 8th is Collard, 9th is Lloyd, and 10th is Chilton. Over to you for race 3, Brad.
Thanks, Ben. So in race 3, we had a bit of a chaotic start. Now, admittedly, not too much happened in race 3 as much as in the first or the second race. So normally in the third race, as people know, there is a reverse grid. We got reverse grid number 6, which put Turkington on pole for this race. Unfortunately, though, there wasn't really much action at the front. Turkington literally grabbed the lead from the very start and led every single lap, led the full thing from start to finish. However, going to the actual start, though, we had a chaotic start with the BMWs getting a great start. However, further back, we saw Sutton get a puncher as Stephen Jelly was also in the wars. Dan Lloyd spun and smashed into the barriers side on, which put him out of the race as well. With the crash effectively putting 3 cars out on the spot, it brought out the safety car. The restart itself was quite straightforward. However, on lap 6 we saw a scary spin with Sam Osborne, who locked his brakes and stopped in the middle of the track. Thankfully didn't get hit by any other cars, but they did come very close to a horrible accident, which was very scary stuff. Despite being on the softest and fastest tyre, Aidan Moffat didn't actually manage to make much progress in this race. Further in the race on lap 11, we saw Jack Butel get punted off at the final chicane, which caused him to drop down the order. Later in that lap, on lap 12, we saw Tom Chilton retire at the side of the track with a problem, and also Daryl DeLeon got a penalty, which was a big shame as he actually was racing really well. I believe at the time when he got the penalty, he was around 12th, so he was actually in the points, which was a great debut for him. On lap 16, we saw Jake Hill spin his BMW once again, which obviously dropped him down the order. But as I said, apart from a few surprises here and there, this race was relatively straightforward for Turkington and ended with Turkington winning for the 13th time at Croft, with Tom Ingram and Josh Cook to round out the podium. So your race 3 results were: Colin Turkington was your race winner with fastest lap as well. Ingram was second along with Cook for third. Camish fourth ahead of Rowbottom in fifth. Then we had Moffat in sixth, Butcher seventh, Hill in eighth, Aaron Taylor-Smith in ninth, and George Gamble rounding out the top 10. So what does it do to the driver's standings? Well, Ash Sutton, unsurprisingly, still leading the championship, albeit by 6 points. Colin Turkington's nearly another 30 points behind Ingram in third on 224. Then we have a closely knit battle behind with Jake Hill and Dan Camish separated by just 5 points, but also not far away from Turkington themselves. Then we have a big gap back to Josh Cook in 6th on 164. Then Dan Rowbottom in 7th, Adam Morgan in 8th on 126. Rory Butcher and Ricky Collard round out the top 10 on 110 and 104 points respectively. So Ben, who were the winners from the weekend in your opinion?
Probably just Napa Racing. This weekend was sort of just basically, they proved they've obviously got that car set up for at least 3 of their drivers, where they can just quite clearly, if you watch it, you can cleverly see using the front end obviously to steer and for the power because it's front wheel drive, but they've cleverly got it set up where if you throw the car into a corner, it'll bounce up so one of the tyres isn't in contact, so really to get a bit better of driving off it because they're not sort of like pulling the rear through the corner as much. So it's quite cleverly set up, and obviously 3 of their drivers have definitely sort of figured out how to get an advantage off that. Obviously, it's not an illegal advantage, it's just a clever way of dealing with a front-wheel drive car, which if you look at Ingram and his team, you sort of see they're doing a similar thing now. They're sort of, following suit. So yeah, I'd say Napa Racing have definitely, they've got somewhat levelled with that car at this point, and obviously it's quite interesting to sort of see what's going on with the rest of the grid, see if they start pulling here and bits from the car and everything under the new regs.
Yeah, so I mean, if I was to pick a winner, I probably would pick Napa myself. However, to just be a bit different, and this might make you happy, I'm going to pick 3. So I'm going to pick Ingram because the fact of, again, consistency is the key in this championship. He did really well to keep second place in the championship. Could have probably took Ash, I think, but that Napa fourth was just too quick. Turkington brought home a set of great results, I think. Even though, granted, he got a win in the fastest lap in the last race, he still managed to finish 6th and 7th in the first 2 races, so a good chunk of points in the championship for him. And another person who, despite being 6th in the championship, did have a really good set of results this weekend was Josh Cook. Because obviously he had his podium in race 3, he came 5th in race 2, and he was 4th in race 1, so he got a good chunk of points. The only big disadvantage, I think, with being as far back in the championship as he is that these results might look good on paper, but unfortunately, they're not doing much in terms of a title bid. I think it's fair to say he's near enough out because he's nearly 100 points behind Sutton, so not great in that regard. But there's actually a bonus question that I just want to throw out here before we go to the genuine question, which is, so this was the first weekend, I believe, that they decided to use all 3 tyre compounds, the soft, the medium and the hard. Do you think it improved the racing this weekend at all?
I liked it, but from some way of looking at it, no, nothing much was changed in the aspect of anything really. It was a bit annoying in that regard. I think there needs to be a bit more of a difference between the 3 sets. Like if you notice, for instance, anybody on softs, at the end of the race, they weren't exactly losing as much as you should. The softs hasn't come off. So I don't really think there's too much of a difference between the 3, apart from maybe the first 3 laps. And I think after that, once everybody sort of got the tyres warmed up and, they're scrubbed in and all that, there's no difference.
Yeah, it was a bit of a weird one, really. I noticed, like, Moffat's hard tyres weren't. They lost grip quicker than the soft tyres did in the final race. It was really weird. Very strange.
Yeah, it's here and there.
Yeah, maybe something for Toka to look into for the next time. But either
I'd
way,
say, yeah, the tyres need to be a bit more different. Like, your softs should be great to start and then just really wear off towards the end.
yeah, exactly.
Because at least you get some nice little battles where somebody be defending while somebody just flies past them.
Hate to say it, but it makes it more realistic and exciting.
Yeah, yeah. That's what you should get from touring cars. At the end of the day, it's an exciting sport.
Yeah, exactly. With that being said, we are going to wrap this race review up here. As always, let us know what your thoughts on this weekend's racing was. Did you like it? Did you not like it? Let us know in the comments as per usual. We will catch you in a fortnight's time when we travel north of the border to Scotland, where we get to see the Knockhill circuit, very famous for some close racing. A very short circuit, very short lap as well. Last year we saw Hill versus Sutton. Will we see a repeat this year, or will it be Sutton versus Ingram? Who knows? But either way, thank you as always for watching. We really appreciate all the support we can get with these videos. As per usual, you can find, like I said, you can find the 2023 race review playlist down in the description. And on that note, thank you very much for watching. Have yourselves a great night, and of course, as always, ta-ra.
Bye.